how you use them.
T-minus 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff.
Hello, hello, hello. Guess what? It's time for March Madness. We are sitting here at the end of, actually, not quite. We can't say the back half of April because I can't even say that. It's March Madness. I just completely misspoke. So I completely messed up my open here and everything talking to you. But what we're here to talk about is March Madness and sports betting. There's a lot of things going on. And we're going to see if we can unlock some knowledge about why betting is so crazy on March Madness now. It's because of the Supreme Court from 2018 and a bunch of things that are happening in the States. So we're going to see if we can unlock your brain so you can talk to all your friends, although yesterday was St. Patrick's Day, where you could have been sitting there and raising a glass of green beer and saying, hey, do you know why this is or that is? You know, those fun facts when you're just kind of having a beer with your friends and you want to amaze everybody with your wonderful knowledge. Well, guess what? We're going to give you some wonderful knowledge and you can amaze them as you make your brackets today and tomorrow, March 19th, as March Madness starts with the play-in games. You know, those 8 from the outside, the at-large teams and qualified teams. There's 4 of them playing for the coveted 16 and 10 spots on your bracket for the big party that starts in 48 hours. So let's get into it. First, today, what we're going to cover is I'm going to talk about the Supreme Court decision and what's happening to sports betting in America. But we're going to do that really quick because it's one topic and fast. And then I'm going to run down the hall and find my board. And we're going to talk about March Madness and a little quick case study and give you some backdrop on everything from seedings to gambling to TV ratings. There's some pretty interesting stuff. So let's jump into it. So once upon a time in 2018, the Supreme Court struck down a law that said the federal government was interfering with the states' rights to govern as they please. Now, there are Indian reservations, or should I say Native American reservations, all over the place with casinos that had gambling. But the states also said we should be able to do that. But there was a 1992 federal law that was really designed to put the federal government in control of gambling decisions for the states, to which the federal government with the Supreme Court said, hang on a second. The reason there was once an unlimited speed limit on certain parts of Montana, there literally was a strip of highway, very famous in Montana, that had no speed limit apparently. Like 85, 90, I think they, you know, if you're in a car that shouldn't be doing that, you can get pulled over. But by and large, you could go 85, 90 miles an hour across Montana, this one strip. Montana's very big, very lonely, and they would let you do it. That's Montana's decision. Then you get down to somewhere like Delaware, where everything is 65 miles an hour. That's it. Then you get some places like Texas, where you've got toll roads that had a 75 mile an hour on this toll road, 80 mile an hour. No. Why am I bringing those up? Delaware, Texas, Montana, their roads, their rules, their highway patrol, their laws. They could do that. So the Supreme Court said, why is the federal government telling the states what they can and can't do on something that's a local decision? And so it went to the Supreme Court that said the federal government cannot regulate states for gambling. The states will regulate gambling in each of their states as they see fit, just as they do speed limits and many other laws and have income tax or no income tax like there is in Texas and in Florida. Thank God, praise God. Thank you very much. No income tax there. And I've enjoyed both of those states. So listen to this. Judge Samuel Alito Jr. said, it is as if federal officers were installed in state legislative chambers, armed with the authority to stop legislators from voting on offending proposals involving gambling. A more direct affront to state sovereignty is not easy to imagine. Overturn it. And so it got overturned. And what that allowed was all the states to suddenly start making their own rules on gambling. It had far-reaching effect because all the sports were like, whoa, 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 whoa. So now they may be voting on gambling on baseball in these states, but not those states. State decision, state decision. So let's go check this out. We have a graphic here, and look what happened. Remember what I told you? 2018. Well, this is the revenue. This is the cut This is the gambling revenue here, is not what you and I spend. That's called the wager. Consumer wager is a big stack of money. This is the fees and the revenue that all of the legal gambling establishments make. And this comes from our good friends at the American Gaming Association. Thank you very much for allowing us to use your graphic. So, the U.S. Supreme Court strikes down right there in a little tan box in May of 18. 2019, about $1 billion for gambling. 2020, $1.5 billion. But in 2020, the reason it is so much smaller than 2021, what happened in 2020? COVID, and was there March Madness? No. Lockdown, no March Madness. So that $1 billion, $0.9 billion in 2019, that should have been $2-3 billion in 2020, but there was no March Madness to bet on, so it was $1.5 billion. That's why in 2021, the first year you had March Madness. Now remember, this is March Madness, this is Super Bowl, and those are the two biggest pots that Americans wager, put the wager in, but this is the revenue collected by the legal sports betting in the U.S. And there it is. Revenue to gaming, $4.3 billion in 2021. Revenue to gaming, $7.5 billion in 2022. Isn't that huge? And check this out. That's expected to be 2023. It was $11 billion. They're counting it. Right now they say it's 10.92. But when the count and the audit is done, they say it's going to be right around $11 billion. And check this out. Let's talk about the wager. In 2023, 50 million Americans bet legally $16 billion on the Super Bowl in 23. The next year, 67.8 million of us knuckleheads bet $23 billion on the Super Bowl. Now remember, those two numbers I just gave you, 16 billion that we all bet, that's our wager. That's called consumer wagers, or players wager that we put on that. Isn't that amazing? So this is basically a real quick opening explanation of what happened starting 2018, and here it was, New York Times covering it, as well as many other publications did, about what was happening. Now, let's go into March Madness. Now, the stage is set. You can see, boop, 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 boop. Here we go. Look at all the money that the casinos, the legal bookies, the onlines, DraftKings, FanDuel, all the onlines, it's all legal in particular states. So on a state-by-state basis, and I've got a map I'm going to show you where it is legal in the United States, along with a dive into March Madness. So let me take my vault as we unlock your brain, throw your friends. Hey, you know what's up with all the gambling? Hey man, Supreme Court 2018 made a big change. Now state by state, they can make their own laws. I got a black cherry right here. Fantastic. As I like to say, no sugar, no caffeine, but if you're clever, just the right amount of Tito's. You can get watermelon, cucumber mint, and black cherry, and they're non-alcohol. They're alcohol-free. That's a joke about the Tito's. But you can get them at Amazon. Go ahead and order them and unlock your brain with a wonderful, cool, refreshing vault at whatever time of the day you want that lift. Maybe late morning, right after lunch. But right now, let's get a lift, pump, and jump, and go into March Madness and unpack it and see what's happening in that exciting sport. All right. I found my board. First got my some vault. Nice, refreshing vault. Unlock your brain. Well, this is my board. Now let's talk about backboards. Backboards as in basketball court and March Madness. So I told you I was going to dive a little bit into March Madness, and we're going to do that. March Madness starts now, basically tomorrow. Starting tomorrow, everybody's doing their brackets over the weekend with all the selection shows and everything. And why? Because they all want to go to the Final Four in Phoenix, Arizona, and cut down the nets and win a championship for your school. But in the meantime, all the rest of us are having a whole lot of fun. And we're going to talk about March Madness in 3 different ways. The first thing, we're going to take you through seeds. Seeds matter, and we're going to dive into some data. I love data, and I found some cool data on March Madness seeding. Second, we're going to go into TV ratings and take a look at that. I bet you don't know what the highest rated final of all time is. Don't look it up. See if you know it. And in a few minutes, see if you're right. Then we're going to dive into wanna bet, gambling, and what it means in March Madness, especially in light of where it being legal. And we've got a big map of the United States going to tell you where it's legal and where You're waiting because the federal government, Supreme Court 2018 said this is a state decision. We're staying out of it. Don't you wish the federal government would do that more often? Boy, I do. So let's jump in. Seeds matter. Now, I found NCAA data that got pulled up since 1985. 1985 was about the time that they went to 64 teams in the tournament. So we go there. Now then, you might be asking, as you make your brackets, you know, how do I pick a champion? Most people just go by one-loss records and start going through and they look at seed, one-loss record, and that is the whole science of most people going through making a bracket. Most brackets are remarkably similar, believe it or not, and yet no one gets it right. Well, if you were looking to say, who should be in the championship slot? Who should be there? Well, the number one seed, there's 4 number one seeds, you know, from the 4 regions of the country, 25 champions, including 12 of the last 16. 64% of the time, you better have one of your number one seeds there going all the way. Interesting. Then the number 2 seed, 354 wins, 147 losses. Look at the 1 seed, 500 wins, 128 losses. They go deep. They go deep. And it's resulted in 5 champions, which is 12.8%, which is 76.9% of the total. So 76% of the time, the March Madness champion since 1985 has come from a 1 or 2 seeds. There's 4 1s, 4 2s. So the 8 teams here, 77% of the championships. Add in the 3 seeds. Guess what? 4 more champions. Now we're up to 87%, 281, 148. Take a look at that. Then add up the 4 seeds, just 2 champions. Do you see a pattern here? In other words, the seeding usually gets it right, at least on who should be at the top end of the brackets. Then you go to the 5 seed. There have been no championships out of the 5 seed. Now, that's one of those things in gambling that they call a fool's fact. And a fool's fact is there's never been a 5 seed that's been a champion. That doesn't mean there can't be one this year. It just turns out there never has been one. But the 6 seed, there's been 1 champion. It was 2.6 at the time. Now you're up to 94%. And by the way, through the 4 seed, that's 92% of the champions. So if you have anything other than a 4 seed or lower in as your championship or playing for the championship, you know, you should probably have 1s and 2s in there because history will be on there. So as you think about it, unless you're like, you know, you're basically the second coming of Dick Vitale and you think you've really got it all figured out, look at the odds with you. The number 7 seed, there's only been 1 champion. The number 8 seed, there's only been 1 champion. That was Villanova going way, way back. They shot the lights out one night, meaning they just shot like crazy, unbelievable field goal percentage, and this is the highest seed. In other words, that's not the, or you can also say that's the highest numbered seed, the lowest seed ever to get in. So there you have it, and win. And then you go from here, number 9s, there's been 2 in the Final Four, 2 since 1985. Number 10, there's been 2 in the Final Four. Number 11, there's been 5 in the Final Four. Isn't that interesting? More 11s than that. Number 12, 2 have made the Elite 8. 13, 6 have made the Sweet 16. 14, 6 have made the Sweet 16. The 15 seed, only 1 has made the Sweet 16, meaning they rarely win. The 15 and 16 seed, and those 2 victories were victories over number 1s, then they immediately lost the next game. So this is basically seeds matter. So when you look at it, the data shows here the history of seeds in the championship. Isn't that interesting? I thought that was very interesting, especially since we're talking about legal gambling. Well, let's look up some other information about how seeds matter. Take a look at this. Seeds matter from the NCAA data. Look at this. The number of appearances in the Final Four. I previously showed you championships. Now if you want to screenshot that, now you want to screenshot this, look at this. 37 times they're in the championship game, and as I told you, big number of championships. Look at that. 32%, 12 in the championship game. So guess what? Look at this. If you don't have 1, 2, and 3 playing 1, 2, and 3, except there's 4 1s, 4 2s, 4 3s. So which of those 12 teams are you going to have against each other? Because when you do, most of the time, that's going to be the combination in a championship game. Look how rare this is. Pretty crazy. And by the way, an 8 has actually been in the championship game 4 times, but only 1 victory, Villanova. So the seeds do matter when you look it up like this. So as you're doing it, if you don't know much about the brackets and you don't know much about the teams and you're just looking at the seeds and the win-losses, be careful that you don't have a team from a smaller conference with a good win-loss. Well, like that number 6 seed keeps bouncing along, and all of a sudden you got them knocking off a 3 and a 2, and they're in the Final Four. Wait a minute. There's only been 3 6s in the Final Four. Final Four, championship game. Let this guide your logic and your heart. Step aside for logic, reason, and data. Words talk, numbers scream. Now then, seeds also matter. I found this very interesting. Check this out. We're going to talk only the first round. Because remember, you're going to pick 32 teams in the first round, and then they say at the end of the first round, I've only got 4 of them right. My bracket is completely busted. Okay, here we go. First round, 1 versus 16. Just circle all the 1s and be done with it. Next, 2 versus 15. Only 11 losses in history. 3 versus 14. 22 losses in history. Just select all of your 1, 2s, and 3s and look at this. 85, 92, 98% of the time, you're right. Now, picks up a little bit. 32 losses. Boom. 5-12. 2-1. 50-50, it's 106, 99, about 2-1. Now you only have a 65% chance. This is where it gets interesting here in the middle. 6 versus 11. Almost like, a little bit worse odds. So basically, isn't that interesting? Look at the 11 has had that, and 7-10. Look at this, 5-6-7 versus 10-11-12. This is where you get it right. And if you get these right, this is where your bracket really carries some weight when you're adding up total victories for your pool. 8 versus 9, flip a coin, 74 and 78. So, isn't it? Now, let's apply all that logic today in 2024. What I thought would be really interesting to do is now to take a sip of the vault, unlock our brain, and talk about this year. So let's go take a look. The number 1 seed, you have UConn, Houston, Purdue, North Carolina, and the overall number 1, UConn, right behind them, Houston. So that's interesting, 64% of the time. And if you've got these, you might, if you're like me on just your fun bracket, I took both of those and I just ran them to the middle. Because I happen to think that Purdue won't be in the Final Four, but I think UNC, so I'm thinking 1-1-2-2, and I'll show you why. Because look, Tennessee's sitting there. Make sure I've got that in the right bracket and everything. And so, oh wait, I got a bracket. There it was. Editor's note, I was not in the bathroom. Be sure you compress the time. I got my bracket. Just had to go get my bracket. Okay, so basically when you go over there and you look at Tennessee and you say, okay, where's Tennessee? Well, Tennessee is sitting there as the number 2 seed with Purdue. So I got Tennessee getting by Purdue. And then over on this side, I'm not sure about Arizona getting past North Carolina. I haven't made up my mind yet, but I definitely think Houston's going to take care of Marquette and UConn is going to take care of Iowa State. So guess what? That's where I've got it. I may be wrong, but the stats are with me. See what I mean? So you work the brackets in this way. This is just one way to do it. But I'm just pointing out when you look at this year's teams and then you start looking at the history and the stats, guess what? Things start looking like they almost make sense until the madness part of March Madness happens. The last bucket, the drive, Kristen Leitner from half court, all those things start happening. We go to the 3 seed. There's only been 4 champions. Creighton, No, you're not even going to think about Final Four there. Baylor, Kentucky, Illinois, Kentucky, could get hot at the wrong time or the right time. And then you see Auburn, Duke, Alabama, Kansas, but this is Duke under new leadership. See, and now all of a sudden you start looking at it this way with and I ran it down to the 8 because I thought that was a good way to look at it so you can run it through the champions. Do you think there's a champion coming out of here? First time ever, FAU is in the Final Four last year, showing they have a good program, but they're in the middle of the 8-9. Whew, that's usually a dangerous and tough place to play. You got to really fight through the mud there with teams that you're most likely right up against. But this is the data. So now this is how the data and the history, I thought would be fun to look at this and to say, forget about whether you went to one school or the other. I went to Pepperdine. So we haven't had anything to cheer about in our basketball since Doug Christie played there a million years ago. And so you take a look now at that the seedings usually most of the time get it right. Sure, we're going to have arguments about, oh, we should have been in the playout round. We're the best seed ever to be left out of the 16. And 2 times they win the game. So you cry your way in, hey, we made it to the NCAA. See you tomorrow, Mom. Why? I'm going to lose. So we'll be home. But you see, the data starts to talk to you. Now then, and all the way down, 15, 16. So let the data maybe guide a bracket if you don't want to be, the absolute, ESPN super analyst. Now then, let's look at the TV ratings. So we're going to talk about gambling in a minute, but now let's talk about TV ratings. We go back here. This is the millions of people that have watched the national championship viewership. And look at this, 1995, 27.4, 28.4, so 26, 27, 28 million, 26, 26. These first 5 years here with the bigger tournament, it was sure exciting, but look at what happened all the way down here. And last year, what was it, San Diego State playing UConn or something? I don't remember exactly. I think that's what it was. And then all of a sudden in here, you have a 28. Now, you didn't have a tournament in 2020. We already talked about that. That's COVID, so this is missing there for a reason. But look at that yellow line. That is a trend line. And that is a straight trend line, what's called a fair trend line, because I didn't draw it, I let the numbers draw it. So that is a calculated trend line going down there, saying that why are they paying billions and billions and billions for this? 2 reasons. The first reason, live sports has the ads you and I watch. Why? Remember we used to say TiVo, then we said DVR? Well, look, you don't record and fast forward over live sports usually, especially over the Super Bowl or the NCAA final. You may do baseball games during the season. I do that with Dodger games, and I'll sense that the inning's about to end. I try to fast forward. And sometimes MLB Network is like, with a German accent, halt! You cannot fast forward this part. You must watch the ad for Dodge trucks. And it's like, damn it. I have to watch the ads. So I have to sit there like this and watch the ad. Well, guess what? Live sports is where everybody watches the ads. So the ads for live sports are more valuable because of the impact they make. They're not getting fast forward. It's not like YouTube. You can skip this ad in 3, 2, go, skip. And you don't even know what it was about. I saw 2 girls on bicycles doing something, could have been for sunscreen, could have been for fashion wear, could have been Under Armour and athletic wear, could have been Lululemon. I don't know, because I just fast forwarded immediately. So that doesn't happen on TV. TV, the ads matter, they make big money, and they're willing to pay big money for an audience that is paying attention, is going to watch that ad, unless they've had their beer and run to the bathroom and back. But they're going to watch. So even though the viewership is like this, the fact is we've gone from broadcast TV to the cable era, and now we're in the streaming cable era where YouTube TV and Hulu have emerged and other players that are out there willing to pay for things. If I told you 5 years ago that Amazon would own NFL Sunday Ticket, would you have said, you're crazy? If I told you YouTube would own NFL Sunday Ticket, say you're crazy. Well, guess what? One of them did. And they're using that to promote themselves the same way that DirecTV used it way back when, during the age of cable and satellite. Why? Because live sports rules. Live sports brings ad dollars. Live sports is what people want to do. Otherwise, they could binge on old House of Cards on their computer, on their phone, whenever they want. Get the $16.99 Netflix and do it whenever they want. Live sports, They want to lock them up. I will pay this much money for an NFL Sunday ticket, and they have to come to me, you know? And guess what? Now I use that as an anchor. So you can see what's happened to the viewership there. And even though the viewership is down, the amounts of money they're being paid by the streamers or what's left of cable is incredible, really incredible. Now then, trick question. The top games. So here are the top games in the history of the NCAA. Remember I showed you on this page, whoop, go one more back, 28.4 million in 1998. But we go over here, Michigan State, Indiana State. This was 35 million people. This is called share. This was the old TV rating share. This says 24.1% of American households, 1/4 of America households were watching one thing that night. But you also have to remember, this is 1979, and only a few people had cable. Cable was born and getting up. We were watching all of this on broadcast television. And it was coming through cable, but we didn't have 300 channels on cable. Remember those days? Well, guess what? Do you remember what game this was? Gosh, this goes back a while. 1979, Michigan State, Indiana State. 1/4 of America was watching that? Really? 35 million people? What was so exciting? It was Magic Johnson at Michigan State versus Larry Bird at Indiana State. What is known as Magic versus Larry 1.0. Look how young they both were and everything. And then, barely a year and a half later, this man would be Rookie of the Year with the Los Angeles Lakers, and they would defeat the Philadelphia 76ers, and he would win himself his first of what would be 5 NBA championship rings. So if you're too young to remember, this was the biggest game in NCAA history, and it goes way back. We haven't been able to get 35 million people to watch it since, yet it's now a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. So then we go to TV ratings for women. When we first start, you know, Connecticut, Tennessee, two very popular. Remember Pat Summitt and UConn, Tennessee? Boy, look how popular. 7.4 million viewers. The first time women were on in an expanded field. Boom, 7.4 million. But look what happened last year. What was going on here? We suddenly had 10 million people wanted to watch the women's NCAA final. Give me one word. Give me. Yes. Caitlin. That is exactly right. Caitlin from Iowa. And she has redefined women's basketball in terms of setting records. She's also charismatic. She's also in the Final Four. Everybody wanted to see what she's going to do. Boom. Look at that. The biggest women's final of all time, thanks to the popularity of a player. Isn't that amazing? So there's the TV ratings for women. See how it slumped down a little bit there and basically get 3, 3.8, 3.5, 3.7, 4, 4.9. We've seen it. Women deserve the viewership, so check it out. It's a great game. Now, betting. We've gone from bracket data. Now we've gone into TV ratings. Now let's go into March Madness and the state of sports betting. Check this out. The American Gaming Association, and thank you very much for all your statistics, AGA, really appreciate it, but they said 2.7 billion is going to be bet. Remember I said players? We are the players, not the players on the court. We are the players playing the bets, making the bets, and we make what's called the wagers. The wagers are 2.7 billion on men's and women's via legal sports betting. That's FanDuel, DraftKings, Call Caesars, BetMGM, all those things that are on there, even BetESPN, which came out of their acquisition of Barstool Sports, which had been acquired by Penn Gaming, and away we go. Look at that. Now then, remember I told you that the Supreme Court said the states can make their decision. So this is, as of March 11th, going into March Madness, as of last week, we have 38 states in the District of Columbia. Even though you've got nothing but crime in D.C., you apparently can bet on basketball. You have 38 states in red where it's live, legal. And then there's I don't see any states of the light pink, but it's on here. Live, legal, not yet operational. It's 0 states, they say. Now, active legislation on the ballot, 6 states. Hawaii, 1. Oklahoma, Missouri, Georgia, Alabama, Minnesota. Guess what? 6 states where it's a ballot for the people, probably coming up in November, and we're going to vote on it. And those 6 and 38 would take it to 44. No legislation pending in Idaho, Utah, Texas, and South Carolina, but dead legislation in California. What a surprise. So there you have it. So that means if you're in one of the red states, you can go to FanDuel, DraftKings, all those places I mentioned, and make a legal bet on the NCAA. You can even, some of them will allow you to get a group of 5 friends together and do a little bracket competition. Kind of like fantasy football. Remember, you couldn't do it anywhere? Then you could do it everywhere, and you can invite your friends. But look at that. Pretty amazing. So now let's look at what's going to happen when we all start betting on March Madness. Away we go. Well, according to AGA, 68 million Americans wagered $15 billion on March Madness in 23. And it was only 45 million of us, and we wagered $3 billion. Wait a minute, in 22. 3 to 15, that was because a whole bunch of states that have large populations and a lot of people passed their legislation. It was on that red map. Boom! And when you allowed Americans to bet on March Madness, boy, did they bet. It was 5x one year to the next. And 25% of Americans, remember 25% of America actually saw March Madness, the final game, Magic versus Larry, 35 million Americans, which was 24% of the TV households. Well, now 25% of Americans are actually going to make a bet on March Madness. Where will they do it? 75% said that 2003 was their first, official bet on the NCAA tournament. I'm wondering if they're counting all of us that used to put $20 in the jar and we would all do the office pool, kind of private betting there. 31 million bettors placed their bets online, a sports book, or with a bookie. Bookie is people that now can legally take bets. It says, and 21 million bet casually with friends. So there's your casual. And 56.3 million participated in a bracket contest. That maybe that didn't involve money. So in other words, there's 300 and something million people in America. So you had basically 1 in 6 of us actually, were in a bracket contest, and 1 in 4 of us actually made a bet, like a bet on a champion or something, or on our favorite team to go this far. Isn't that amazing? That's March Madness betting. It's become bigger than ever. It's legal, and the states are doing their job. So thrill your friends with the 3 segments I've shown you today about the state of betting in March Madness, the state of the Supreme Court decision that let us have that, the bracketology, as it used to be called, with the data that's here, and then TV. Some of you are going to say to somebody tonight, as you're picking your bracket, hey, do you know what was the most watched NCAA final of all time? I don't know, was it, and they'll pick some game that they saw. Say, nope, Michigan State, Indiana State, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson 1.0, Michigan State would win the national championship. 24% of America watched, 35 million people. Facts like that, I hope this has been useful to you. I hope we've unlocked your brain as you go to do like the Biz Doc's doing, having a friendly contest and picking your bracket. Until next time, have a vault. Unlock your brain, pick your bracket. Good luck to you. I'm going to go back to main studio and wrap up. Hey, hope you enjoyed the case study on March Madness. That is one of my favorite case studies because there's so much social things going on with the federal government getting out of the way of the states making their own decision on gambling, and you and I, gambling sensibly, carefully, within our own means, can now not have an illegal office pool. We can go to FanDuel or DraftKings and set it up, invite our friends, have our own bracket competition, which you're filling out today, along with those play-in games. If you like that case study, there's these case studies from the Biz Doc archive you might enjoy as well. And until next time, I'm Tom Ellsworth, the Biz Doc, and I hope I left you better than I found you. Good luck on your bracket.